What about Afghanistan? We haven't discussed that. We are watching these next couple of months as the various forces from the West move out, including Canada's and the Americans, with great hopes that things are going to be calm and settled there.
Right.
Hope.
Right.
As opposed to what many feel, analysts feel, that it's going to be the same old story in Afghanistan.
Right. Right.
Now, you have a lot of time and energy and your work invested in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's a very fragile time. Let's be clear. As I said earlier in Parliament, I'm a strong believer in civil society. But civil society can't grow in a disabling environment. If the Afghan environment becomes more disabling than it is today, then I don't see a peaceful process ahead. Because I think there's going to be a lot of tension amongst the communities, amongst various parts of the city, of the country. So I'm worried about that, frankly. But if the political process, the outcome of the political process, is one which looks at how you continue the reconstruction of civil society in the country, I think there's a good chance it'll work. It won't work all over the country at the same speed, that's clear. But I hope that there would be sufficient confirmation of the positive process of change in areas of the country that the others will say, that's what we want.
This is the North and the East doing well, the South and the West not so well.
Yes.
It's been that way for a while.
Yes, it has. But that can change.
What about the leadership in Afghanistan? 6 years ago, you still had confidence in Hamid Karzai.
Yes. Well, I think at this point, the key issue for Afghanistan now is going to be whether civil society and the development processes will be protected. That's my big worry.
Do you have confidence that they will under his leadership?
I don't think it's a question of his leadership. It's a question of the competence of the Afghan organizations, the security organizations. Are they well trained enough, numerous enough, well equipped enough, ethnically properly chosen, so that the country...
What's the answer to those questions?
I don't know the answers for the whole of the country. I know that in areas where we are working, we still would like to see much more done. And I'll be frank, I'll see a lot more done.
So that is yet another worry checkbox for you, Afghanistan.
Yes, definitely so.
What would you tell, just as a last question on Afghanistan, what would you tell the family of a Canadian soldier or aid worker who went to Afghanistan the post 9/11 period to make a difference and never came home, or came home but not alive? What would you say to them, given what we're looking at today?
Well, I think I would first of all say obviously that this is a personal tragedy. I mean, that is in any event a basic premise. So anyone who loses a child in any part of the world, in any circumstance, is a person who has suffered horrible loss. I think the reality is that certainly Canada, United States, Western Europe cannot afford, for obvious reasons, to let countries in the developing world go completely, let's say, out of civilized governance. I think that's obvious. We've seen it happen. We saw it in the 60s. We've seen it in the 70s. So that's not an answer. So the question is, what are the solutions? And I think the solution has got to be we move as quickly as we can, but we also move as effectively as we can so that these countries of crisis become countries of opportunity, but moving, not paralyzed. If they're moving, then there's an effort that has been made to assist these countries to move forwards. And once they establish their own dynamic, once they have got the momentum in that process, then the population is going to stay with that. They will understand that there's a hope ahead, and they will not want to change that. It's when there is a sense of despair, a sense of fear, a sense of loss of any hope for generations in the future, that people say, well, we've got to change. And I hope that at least in areas of Afghanistan, the efforts that have been made by foreign troops to assist the country will definitely be valued and will produce results. But I'm not going to say that that can be even across the country. That I don't think will be the case.
So we're looking at a split Afghanistan.
I think we're looking.
Best.
I hope we're looking at an Afghanistan where there will be different levels of performance, and various provinces will look at other provinces and say, that's where we want to go. That's my hope. But I have to tell you, it's touch and go.
Last question. Because you have been on the stage of international leaders for more than half a century. Still look pretty young.
Thank you.
But tell me, it's always my goal to try and understand something about leadership. And you've had the close-up view of so many, from Kennedy to the current crop. You've seen them all in countries around the world. Can you pick out one person who symbolized great leadership?
Maybe not one person. I think I could pick out qualities. I've seen heads of state whose capacity to think ahead of their times has been magnificent. I have seen individuals whose intellectual dimension has enabled them to bring forward articulation on forces of society which people haven't necessarily recognized, but they're going to be very, very important in the future. So that sort of quality of leadership I admire. And I'm not sure that I would feel too comfortable in telling you who those individuals are, but they're both European and North American. And I think that there are also perhaps in the developing world men and women who have had the faculties of leadership that I've mentioned to you. But I think the developing world has been a more difficult world to have those capacities actually exteriorize themselves. There's much more stability in the political process in Western Europe and North America than there is in these other countries. But those are the qualities that seem to me really important because, in a sense, they're gifts to future generations. And that is, to me, something which is very, very important indeed.
Your Excellency, once again, Your Highness, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.